Yeah.
Okay.
We've got a nice button on the left screen.
Over to you, Sophie. We're now recording.
Okay, cool. Can you hear me okay? Because it's gone very quiet on mine.
I can hear you perfectly.
We can hear you very well.
Okay, lovely. So, okay, I'm just going to share my screen. And hopefully that's going to work.
Yeah.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so I'm going to start talking about indoor food growing. So basically, yeah, there's a lot of things to say. Let's see. I'm just going to give like an overview in 10 minutes. So I think, yeah, the first thing is like expectation. In your indoor space, unless you've got like a big greenhouse as part of your house, you're not going to grow like the bulk of your food. But what you can do is grow something that's nutrient dense and is very fresh. And like that way you're going to get a lot of value. So yeah, you're going to have this nutrition, and you're also going to be able to understand something about plant life that maybe you haven't observed before by watching these things grow. So the first step is you need to survey. So you need to see where you've got sunlight in your place. You need to look at how the light is moving around, and just think of all the resources, because things like microgreens will need a lot of light, and they'll need a long period of light. And then, yeah, you want to just look at what equipment you can. Got lots of things growing in like yogurt pots that someone gave me, plastic tubs. You can really reuse a lot of things. Maybe some people now are going to be spending more time at home, and it's a really good time to start growing a lot of things. So one of the first and easiest things, like the first step, is sprouting. Something, even though I've got a garden, I still do. I can add at the end some different like instructions and recipes if people want. But the main point is that, yeah, when you've got a seed, it's got all the nutrition inside it to make a whole plant. And basically by soaking it and allowing it to sprout, you're unlocking that nutrition. So you're getting something that has very available proteins, enzymes, minerals, vitamins, and a lot of the anti-nutrition in food, especially like beans, is removed. So it's very easy to digest. So you can do that with peas and beans, you can do it with grains, vegetable and leafy plants, and nuts and seeds. So yeah, the basic technique is soaking them and then putting them at 45 degrees in the jar with the fabric over it, and then just washing them every day and leaving them to drain. And once you've got the little shoot coming out or the first fake leaves, then you can eat them. Then the next step after that is microgreens, which take up a bit more space, but you get a bit more kind of bulk of the green parts of the plant. So with them, you can also recycle a lot of trays. You need to use organic seeds, and some of the things that are really good to use in all of these projects are brassica family. So that's the like cabbage mustard family, because they're very fast growing. So they'll germinate very fast. Again, you're going to soak the seeds. You're going to line plastic trays with paper. You fill with a soil mix and plant them quite densely, keep them moist, cover them with a lid. And then when you've got the first real leaves, then you can cut all of your crop. So this one here is not exactly microgreens. They should be denser than this, but it gives you the idea of the kind of stage that you're going to keep the plant till. And yeah, so then yeah, other things here, just some examples of things from the brassica. So this is like a kale, which is also something you can grow in a small space. Mizuna is another one from the same family that's very fast growing. You can grow like a microgreen, or you can grow it up in a tub. And all of these are like very nutrient dense foods. So you would use them in a small quantity, but they'll give you something fresh and be worth the use of space. And then, yeah, there's a lot of herbs you can also grow inside. A lot of members of the Lamiaceae family, so the mint family, are also very good for growing inside. Again, you use them in small quantities. You can use them medicinally. So you've got things like, you've got like mint. You've got another one that's really good is nasturtium as well, because that's a very beautiful decorative plant and you can eat all the parts of it. It's got a strong peppery taste. Then, yeah, you can also do things with the allium family, the onion family. So these are leeks that you can, if you buy leeks, you can keep the bottom of them and you can replant them and they'll regrow. The same with onions, you can plant onions and they'll regrow from the top, and you can keep the fresh greens for eating. And then another thing is if you eat mushrooms, you can grow mushrooms at home in quite a small space. So yeah, one of the mediums you can grow them on is coffee grounds. That's something that's quite easy to get usually if you're in the city. I'm not sure at the moment how that's working with coffee places, but yeah, generally what you would do is you would have a sterile growing medium. So in this example here, we've got wood chips that we've inoculated, but you can also do it with coffee. Whatever you use, you need to sterilize it. And then you need to have your spawn, your mycelium, which will grow over the substrate. So usually you need about 500 grams of that for 2.5 kilos of your substrate. And you'd mix them together so that it's moist, and you put them in a warm, dark place for about 3 weeks, and it will colonize the whole mixture and become white. You have any green spots, that's a competitor mold, and you can either try and treat it with salt, or if it overtakes it, you'll need to throw it out and start again. And then, yeah, after about 3 weeks, you can move it to a like an airy kind of light place, and you can cut holes in the side of your container if you've used a closed container, or you can see here on the net it's already open, and they'll start growing from the side. So you can keep the whole thing moist by these sacks that we have. We dunk them in water from time to time, and then you get like a flush of mushrooms. Okay. And then, yeah, at home, if you've got more space, if you've got balconies, if you've got anything a bit bigger, you can then start to think about potted plants. And again, thinking of varieties that are good in a small space. So like a cherry tomato is going to give you a lot more food in a small space. You can also use like the vertical space. You can have stacked containers. Tomatoes are very good at hanging. A lot of herbs can be stacked on top of each other. So yeah, you can get very creative with the kind of main techniques.
Nice, Sophie. According to the timetable, we're kind of up, but should we maybe just check if there's any questions, just in case anyone has anything they'd like to ask?
Yep, for sure.
Any questions from anyone before we move on to the next subject?
I have a question, yeah. Sophie, have you tried with the three sisters? Do you know if that works in a temperate climate? That is corn and some bean plant and what is the last one?
Pumpkin.
Pumpkin, yeah.
Yeah, pumpkin, bean and corn. I have actually tried that. In a temperate climate, the main problem is it's a short growing season. So that's usually from the tropics where they've got a long season. So you'd plant first the corn. Once it started to grow a bit, then you would plant the bean and it would grow up the corn, and then you would plant the pumpkins and they'll create the ground cover. Here that doesn't work with the timing. If you want to do it, you need to start your corn first, like starts in the house to get them started early. And you also need to start the pumpkin, and then you need to get the timing a bit differently, because otherwise the pumpkin will take over everything and your corn won't be big enough to be a support for the bean.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I've
answers.
very rarely ever seen it work here in this climate, in temperate climate. It's
yeah, it's just too short growing season really to be able to transpose it.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Two more people trying to come in, so let me just admit them. Is there no way to automatically admit people? This is, yeah, as you know,
I think this is the new security. You have to do it, manually.
Can you hear me?
I can, yep.
Okay, because I was on mute. No, well, I got no questions. I just have a comment, is that currently I'm living in a flat with no balcony, nothing whatsoever. And of course I've got no pots, no ground, nothing. And there's no shops around here that I could start this, but it's very interesting anyway to listen to.
But you have a windowsill, so you can put things on the windowsill. Some things will grow inside. I used to grow all my ginger and stuff in my bathroom because
That's a good place.
Turmeric and ginger like moist conditions, but warm, but not direct sunlight. Because they grow on the tropical forest floor. So you just need to adjust. Anyway, we're kind of 3 minutes over, so a few more people have joined, so welcome to them. Just want to make sure that we're actually recording this. So is there anyone who's just recently joined who we haven't asked who objects to us recording the session? Is everyone okay with that? Okay, wonderful. Okay, so the next subject, I think, is me, isn't it? Perennial outdoor food growing. And then after that, it's supposed to be Hugo, who I don't actually see on the call at the moment. So maybe either Sophie and I could stretch one of our sessions, or unless someone else has something else, I'm sure someone else has something interesting to share. So
I can also speak about fermentation if people are interested.
Yeah, same here. No problem. So okay, so perennial food growing. That's the subject. As you know, it's something that from a permaculture perspective is very much relished, because you need to put the minimum amount of effort in, and year after year after year, the foods will just keep coming. So when I came back from Paris after the lockdown, I kind of went into self-isolation, and pretty much just with whatever stocks I had in my cupboards before I left, 2 months before, plus whatever was growing in my garden, 2 weeks was absolutely a breeze. Even in kind of February, March, there's so many things coming through that it really, and this is a garden which hardly anyone's touched for 7 years. We've literally just started doing a few things very, 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 very recently, trying to get it back into some kind of an order. And it is so productive because it's mostly perennial plants. So they're very good at mining nutrients, and obviously you make sure you have enough nutrient accumulating plants that will continuously keep feeding the soil, and so on and so forth. So some of the plants for me that work really the easiest is what I want to talk about. So what I can do is I've started to make some lists, and maybe I can just copy and paste this list. It's by no means complete. I'll paste it into the chat so that you've got the names and you don't have to scurry around. What did he say? What did he say? So hopefully you can read those. I think I've double checked all the spellings, but you know me and my dyslexia. So the first one, and to be honest, it was only 2-3 days ago that I finally found the name of this plant. I've been growing it for something like 30 years. It lasts typically for about 8 years, and then around year 4 or 5, when you see there's some really good solid woody kind of branches, you just pull those off, stick them in the ground. Typically I'll try to do that just before the winter, and by the spring, bang, up it comes again. And it just keeps giving you, you know, leaves all year round. Obviously I'm in London, where, you know, it gets to minus quite rarely, but even when it does snow, this particular kale continues to give leaves. So it may wilt a little bit, it doesn't look particularly appetizing, but as soon as the sun comes out again, or as soon as it drops below or it goes above 0, all of a sudden it gets nice and strong again. So I'm just going to mute whoever is not muted, because I'm getting some feedback. So yeah, so it's an incredible plant, you know, quite literally you have green leaves all year round, even, as I say, in a London kind of winter. And I literally just 2-3 days ago, was trying to find the name, and finally I found it. It's called Taunton Dean kale, or cottager's kale. So apparently it's not so easy to find, but Sophie, I know, recently found some seeds for it, which, I'll be honest, in 30 years of growing it, I've never ever seen it go to flower. So I've never seen a seed for it. The next one on the list is probably something that anyone who's done a workshop with me probably knows very well: fat hen chenopodium. It's listed as the #1 healing plant in all the old ancient herbal apothecaries, and you know, it grows all over the world, tropics, temperate, Mediterranean, and so on and so forth. And it's so prolific. It produces so much leaves and then seeds, both of which are edible. The seeds, however, do contain some saponins, as do everything in this goosefoot family, which means that if you want to use the seeds, typically you'd want to put them in water first, soak them, keep the water, because that's soap. You now have soapy water, which you can utilize, but then you can use the seeds in whatever way you like. Even if you do eat them directly, it's not such a problem, because your body can, it doesn't absorb the saponins from these. The next one, mountain spinach, red okra is another name for it. Is in the same kind of family. It just grows much larger, or it can grow much larger, has much bigger leaves. But again, you can even, well, with the seeds, you can even wash them 3-4 times and still get saponins from them before you eat them. Also, both of those, plus the next one, sorrels, all contain oxalic acids, which means that you shouldn't eat too much of them. But I think most people know what sorrels are. Rumix acetosa. There's several different varieties. Again, you know, once you planted them, they'll just keep coming back again and again and again. I've noticed I'm out of time already, so I'll just quickly speed through the rest. American cress is, again, one of these things. It's not a perennial, technically, it's a biannual, but it produces so much seed that it just self-seeds everywhere. And if you haven't ever had it, it has this really amazing, beautiful, sharp, mustardy kind of flavor. It's an incredible one for your salads and things. Asparagus, most people know that probably. Lovage, levisticum, Again, once you've got it growing, it will just come back again and again. Perpetual spinach or chards. Again, once you've got them going, you know, every year they'll just keep producing more and more leaves, and you know, you can break it off. Don't pull the plant out, you just break off the leaf and it will just keep producing more and more leaves through the years. As you probably know, I don't typically eat onions unless it's for medicine, but I've listed 3 here anyway because they are really prolific. 3-cornered leek, Allium triquetrum. Again, just with maybe 5 plants within, I'd say, 4 years, it probably will cover something like at least 1 or 2 square meters. It literally populates itself so quickly. Ramps or Allium ursinum is another one that most people will know. Wild garlic, bear's garlic. And Egyptian walking onions are really amazing. You know, again, you leave them in the ground for 2-3 years, and what it will do is it will produce tiny onions at the top of the actual stem, and then after 2-3 years, it will then have another stem coming off of there and more onions on top of that. And then because of the weight, it bends down and replants your onions somewhere else. So that hence called walking onions. But it produces quite a significant size of onion bulb as well, if you're into that thing. The last couple, very, very quickly, rhubarb. I guess most people know what rhubarb is. It's incredible how you almost never see anyone cooking rhubarb other than in sweet dishes, but just lightly steamed, it's almost like a pickle. It has this kind of really beautiful pickly kind of taste. I love it. Different tubers, Jerusalem artichokes. Again, once you've got them planted, you can't get rid of them. You'll have tons forever and ever and ever. It's amazing. Horseradish. You can eat the young leaves as well, which, you know, and when it goes to flower, the flower and the flower buds, etc., are really, really, really tasty. But come winter, you dig it up for those colds and those cold nights to really get your your whole nasal pharynx area just working really well. An amazing medicine. And the last one I've just added in there are daylilies. Again, once you've planted them, they're called daylilies because every day they'll produce new lilies, new flowers, all of which are edible. You need to be careful which type of lilies you grow, though. Make sure they are this variety because many other lilies are quite poisonous. So you really need to make sure it's this right one. And wow, it's really super, super, super tasty. So, sorry, I'm a little bit over. We've probably only got 5 minutes left anyway before this free version of Zoom times out. Are there any questions about any of those? So you might need to unmute yourself first.
Yeah, if no one else does. First of all, with the onions, why do you grow the onions? I know you mentioned because they scare things. What? Just one second. Sorry, my sister's complaining. They scare pests off. But also, I just thought that you had so much. I mean, surely that just takes up so much space. And also, just with getting the seeds, I think I'm organising a seed swap around here where we are. I think they might have the kind of more standard seeds available. Like they seem to have a lot of rhubarb at the minute, and just not such fancy things. I don't know. Just wondering where you get these things.
I've almost never ever bought seeds in my life. I scavenge, meaning I find things, I pick things, I find seeds as I'm walking along. I take cuttings. So I mean that's one of the difficulties with planting annuals and things like sprouting and stuff like that, is you need a continuous supply of seeds for that. Whereas with using perennial plants, you don't need that continuous supply. it just continuously gives you those. So you find them in whatever way you can, and obviously most of these things I can give you cuttings and what have you. So you just find someone who, because most people who grow these things will be very, very, very happy to pass them on, because they'll have them in abundance. And the reason why I do grow onions, even though I don't eat them, is because of the, most of these come, or with the exception of the Egyptian walking onion, but the Ramsons and the three-cornered leek, they come really early in the season. So they make this blanket and protects the soil from the sun, whatever sun you do have in February, March, April. But they create this really beautiful environment that then allows all the mints and all the other things to then come through. So they prepare the soil, and then they'll disappear. So by May, June, you won't see these anymore. They'll be gone, and they'll be replaced by something else. The walking onions are a different story, though. So.
Amazing. But then don't they get replaced? How do they come back? How do they swap places?
Well, then they retreat back just to the bulb, and so next spring, bang, up they come again. So they don't die. They die back and they retreat like most things in the forest, because then once you've got the ground, the cover of the trees, they die back, and then they wait for the next spring to come. And
May I?
I'm just aware that we've got 2-3 minutes before this session ends, and we were supposed to be doing something on, what was it, on fermentation,
fermentation and preserving.
Yeah. So what do you think? Should we finish with this and just have 2-3 minutes of just finishing with both this and between what myself and Sophie have said, or should we start talking about fermentation?
As far as I'm concerned, I had a question relative to the perennial veg, if it's possible. I just wanted to point out that from what I can see now in France, for example, there's a growing network of permaculture people who really are in the objective to share a lot of their knowledge, a lot of their experience, and also a lot of their seeds. So maybe you want to search in your country where this kind of networks already exists. And my second question was, basically, when you grow that kind of perennial veg, can you mix them with some non-perennial?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I've got obviously trees and shrubs, and then these perennials growing underneath. Typically what I'll have is self-seeders, because I just can't be bothered to be around all year round, bringing them on, potting them up, and then moving them, and blah 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 blah. But if you really do have the time for that, and the love and passion for doing that, and many people do, which is great, not me, then sure, grow them on, get them to the point where they're ready to go out, and then just place them in between. And the advantage of that is because you've got this kind of perennial environment where you've got the nutrient circulation, you've got the nutrients constantly cycling. You don't need to worry about the nutrient balance, meaning, when if people have heard of like crop rotation, where you plant potatoes for 1 year, then the next year you plant something else, and you move your potatoes somewhere else, and so on and so forth, and then you cycle things around. You're doing that because you're depleting the soil of a particular subset of nutrients, and therefore you put the next thing you plant in there, you plant because it's now devoid of a particular set of nutrients, and so in this system where you've got a forest garden style environment, you don't need to worry about that. because you've got a huge amount of nutrients coming from all kinds of different places, and you're not going to plant, 5 square meters of carrots. You're just going to grow, all right, 20 carrots here, 20 carrots somewhere else, 20 carrots in another place, and so on and so forth.
And mix them.
So you really don't need to worry about crop rotation. So yeah, so if you really do want to plant annuals, then no problem. Just interdisperse it between the perennials, knowing full well that when you dig it up and take it out, the fact that all the perennials are around and all the whole soil food web is intact, you digging your plant out isn't going to make much of an impact insofar as all the soil food web will just recreate itself around where you just dug up. So we've got 10 seconds before this collapses. So should we just rejoin in, let's say, 5 minutes?